We've been talking a bit about getting heated, so I wanted to touch a little bit on lying and gaslighting. Most people think lying and gaslighting happen because someone is simply dishonest or manipulative. And sometimes that's actually not true. Relationship science shows that many forms of deception begin as attempts to manage internal experiences like fear or shame, powerlessness, or maybe even conflict. So, understanding why these behavior happen doesn't excuse them, but it can help us stop them, especially if you are the one doing them. Today, we'll look at the difference between lying and gaslighting, why they show up, and what healthy couples do instead. First, lying and gaslighting are not the same thing. Lying is when we provide false information or withhold a truth, and it can be small omissions, white lies, or a lie of omission when we don't say the thing, I never said it, to major betrayals where we've hidden something. The goal is usually to avoid a consequence. I don't want my partner to get upset at me. I don't want to be exposed for the thing that I did because then I would feel bad, right? We're avoiding a consequence. Gaslighting is repeatedly causing another person to doubt their perceptions, memories, feelings, or their reality. It often involves denying observable events, and it can be intentional or habitual, but the impact is an erosion of the trust in your own experience. So, the person, if you are gaslighting, you are eroding your partner's trust of their own experience. They don't trust their own sense of what's happening. So, the important distinction is that a lie protects information, and gaslighting attacks the process by which another person knows what is true. Okay, so a lie might be, I didn't text my ex, but gaslighting might be, you're imagining things, you're always so paranoid. That conversation never happened. So let's look at why people lie. So, research consistently shows kind of 7 common drivers for lying. Fear of conflict. The person anticipates some sort of danger or disappointment or rejection, and then the lie becomes like this short-term strategy to reduce the discomfort that would show up. Um, Shame. The person who's lying, maybe that's you, can't tolerate being seen as flawed or wrong. And research on shame suggests people often hide behavior that threatens their self image. Um, when I worked in a community mental health agency, I had people lie to me a lot. And I liked to think of it as their lie was the version of themselves that they wish they were, not the version that they actually were. Um, that helped me soften it a little so it didn't feel so personal. Um, Not that they should keep lying. Lying is not particularly helpful in relationship. However, um, there can be some kind of significant motivator. There can also be attachment insecurity. So individuals with insecure attachment may fear abandonment, and so they might conceal information to preserve the connection, right? It's kind of a little similar to fear of conflict, even though this isn't particularly the pain of conflict. This is fear of abandonment, but there's a lot of similarities. Um, and then, there's just general avoidance where they're trying to postpone a difficult conversation. Maybe I'll have it, just not yet. And couples become vulnerable to deception when the relationship lacks emotional safety for these difficult truths, right? So when we don't feel emotionally safe, then it's possible that we start lying more or omit things more because we're trying to protect the connection, even though over time, we all know that doesn't work. Most lies solve an immediate emotional problem while creating a larger relational problem. So let's look at gaslighting. Why does it happen? In some cases, this is deliberate. The person is looking for power, control, or freedom from accountability. This sometimes is seen in certain domestic violence situations when the person is looking to control their partner. And obviously has broader context as well. More commonly in everyday relationships, people become defensive and begin to rewrite reality. So they might minimize, they might rationalize, they might reinterpret events or deny the impact. And when people experience threat, the brain often prioritizes self-protection over accurate reflection. So instead of I hurt you, the brain moves towards you're overreacting or that's not what happened. And in this case, the goal becomes self protection rather than understanding. And this is where ordinary defensiveness can begin to resemble gaslighting. Okay. So, how do you tell the difference between a memory disagreement, which happen, and gaslighting? Healthy people are going to remember things differently. Okay. Memory is reconstructive as a process. It's not a perfect recording. This isn't like you go into your mind to retrieve a memory and it's some sort of mental videotape of the situation. Yeah. Every time we reach back and get a memory, we actually can alter it slightly. So it's pretty imperfect and we reconstruct it from past and present experiences. So if your partner says something about an experience that you remember differently, you can say, I remember it differently. Let's figure out what happened. And maybe I can see how you experienced it that way. We can create with our partner, let's say we have an event that we went to and we're remembering it differently. We can actually co-create a more 3D view, 360 view of that memory by sharing our experiences because there's a good chance that one or both of us is missing something. A gaslighting response would look like, you're crazy. That never happened. You're making things up. Nobody would see it that way, right? So the key difference is that one approach, when we are having a healthy response to this kind of imperfect memory, is to make room for the two perspectives, two truths. And the other undermines the person's confidence in their own reality. You're crazy. That never happened. Maybe you should have your memory checked. So let's look a little bit at how lying and gaslighting damage relationships, because they both do damage relationship. So trust isn't just believing someone. Trust is also predictability, reliability, shared reality. And relationship science shows that healthy relationships depend on accurate attunement. So partners must be able to understand each other's experience, repair the misunderstandings, and create a shared narrative. I'm going to repeat that. Understand each other's experience, repair the misunderstandings, and create a shared narrative. Lying and gaslighting disrupt all three of those things. So the result becomes hypervigilance, being always aware, always looking out for yourself, your safety. Chronic doubt, that could be in yourself, that could be in your partner if they're consistently lying to you. Emotional distance, because you're not sure if you can trust them, and reduced intimacy. So, how do we stop these patterns? One, we need to build a tolerance for our discomfort. That's our side of the street. Truth often creates temporary pain. I am not talking about telling a truth about your partner, like, yep, your butt looks big in those pants. Okay. Does that create temporary pain? Yes. But the harder one to do is the one that creates temporary pain in you when you are the liar, when you are tempted to maybe slide from defensiveness into gaslighting. So, learning to tolerate embarrassment, accountability, admitting that you're wrong or that maybe you didn't see all of the aspects of a situation, and tolerating disappointment. in yourself and your own behaviors. That is the harder part, is tolerating within ourselves. Step 2 would be replacing defensiveness with curiosity. Instead of, that's not what happened, you're remembering it wrong. Try, tell me more about how you experienced that. Okay. This again, it starts that process of integration and trust, right? We're creating a shared narrative. Validate before explaining. So, validation is not agreement. Validation means I understand you. I can see why that bothered you. I can understand your perspective on that part. I can understand how that felt to you. People become less defensive when they feel understood. So, is it important for you to have your part of the experience explained? Yes. And it is also important to state that you understand your partner's experience. That's the validation. And step 4, practice radical ownership. Replace something like, you're making too big a deal of this, with, I can see how my actions contributed to this. Accountability strengthens trust, and defensiveness weakens it. What is it that you can see what was your role? Can you see how you played a role in that situation? This is actually especially powerful with kids. Um, we often have a tendency to downplay kids' distress because we've got just a bigger perspective. Oh, this is not going to be a big deal tomorrow, right? But it's a big deal in that moment. And sometimes we contribute to that if we are trying to um, get them to calm down and downplay it and get them to see perspective that they can't see yet. Um, we contribute to the escalation of that. So when we take ownership, it teaches our kids how to do that. And it also helps them to feel validated. So lying and gaslighting often begin as attempts to escape discomfort. Every time we avoid reality, we weaken trust. Strong relationships aren't built on perfect behavior. They're built on the ability to face reality together. The opposite of deception isn't perfection. It's the willingness to stay connected to the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. If you want to know more about lying, trust, gaslighting, you can look at John Gottman's work on trust and betrayal. You can look at Dan Siegel's work on integration and attunement and how threat affects perception and communication. You can look at Sue Johnson's work about attachment insecurity and relationship distress. And research literature on attachment theory, betrayal trauma, memory reconstruction, and interpersonal trust. Take care of yourselves and each other.